back again with, as I stated, information. The purpose of this channel is to provide you information just through my life's journey on how I became a social worker, because again, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm also a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. So I told you the journey the last time we met about how it is I became a nurse. It's kind of similar what I'm going to talk about briefly today, but this is how I started the process of becoming a licensed clinical social worker. One of the unique challenges for me is, as I said earlier in my previous video, I made bad choices. Bad choices has resulted in what's called a criminal history. I like to say it that way because that's exactly what it is. It's about bad choices. When you're young and you make bad choices, one thing you have to understand is when you make bad choices and you look like me, meaning I'm a black man, it sometimes can be real challenging to be forgiven because there's accountability, because I got the accountability for what it is that I did, but the stigma that goes along after the accountability. What do you mean? Like I have told so many times the story of what it was that I did to have a criminal history. And I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details about that because this is about progress. What I like to use this as a format. I don't want to glorify the chronicles of the challenges with bad decision making. I'm talking about the process after you decided to stop making bad decisions, after you decided to take accountability for your bad decisions. And then the challenge is really there. Because when you stop making bad decisions, you have to change the people that you hang out with. You have to change, most importantly, your mindset. And you have to change some of the challenges that you say are unobtainable. Like an example is, I have 7 degrees. I have 3 associate degrees, 2 bachelor's degrees, 2 master's degrees. I got a few certifications. So I'm real big on education because education levels out the playing field for me. But here's the reality. Even though I have that, I always feel as though I have to be better than everybody else, simply because I'm fighting my past. I'm fighting a decision I made at 18 years old. And guess what? The reality is you're going to fight that past as long as you live. So, with that being said, let's get into what I want to talk about briefly. So, here's my journey. My journey in particular is I decided in the year 2002, I said, I'm going to go back to school. I was working, as I said in my previous video, at a place called Waltz, right, in Wilmington, Delaware. And I'm very grateful for him. He became my mentor. His name is Harry Shepard. May he rest in peace. But Harry Shepard took a chance on me. Harry Shepard was very prevalent because he hired a lot of guys who were bad decision makers. And when they got out of prison, they were able to have a job to begin the process of getting your life together. Well, I was working there and I was really jealous of the managers that were there, the people that had been there because of the work they did. They did the work to become a manager. So what I decided was I need to find something I have a passion for. What do I like? So I decided to sign up for school. Now, the real challenge with signing up for school is whatever it was like for you when you finished high school, you're going to revisit those emotions, those feelings. It's like a butterfly effect. You're going to transcend time and be right back in that place wherever you were. So in my case, I was a class clown, but I was smart. So I knew how to do the work. I just wasn't really interested in it. So when I went back to college, one of the things I realized, if I would have done it in hindsight, was make the sacrifice after you have gotten your grant money to start paying out of pocket. Just my personal opinion. So what happens is I went back and I applied for community college because community college is a good onset because a lot of people go through community college, build your experience up, and then you can transfer to a major university such as University of Delaware, Delaware State, Widener, Wesley, wherever it is that you may want to go. So I started at Del Tech and it was the best experience for me. When I went into Del Tech, I was clueless. What Del Tech did was Del Tech started me out with some real basic courses because let's backtrack for a second. I had to apply for student loans, right? And I had a student loan back in California way back in the 80s. Let you see my age. But way back in the 80s, I had decided to go to some kind of trade school or something like that, and I never paid the student loan. So one of the things Del Tech required me to do in order to get the grant money was I had to go back and set up and start paying on the student loan. So I contacted the student loan people. made them an offer. I said, I'm willing to pay X number of dollars. Of course, they wanted a little more. So what happened was I made the payment consistently for 6 months. After 6 months, they restructured it and put it into a default status, which is how I was able to stop paying on the loan immediately as long as I stayed in school. I don't necessarily recommend that way, but again, it is a way to resolve uh, improving the quality of your life. So with that being said, that was the journey that I took. So once I got the student loan out of a default status, well, really, when I first got the loan and started paying back on it, I was immediately granted more money. So I literally, the whole process took me maybe a month. I was registered in school, ready to go. Well, Del Tech required you to take remedial classes, reading 101, technical composition, no, technical reading and writing, and I think it's called communicative writing, whatever it is. There's three very important classes you take. The writing, because it teaches you how to write. The reading teaches you comprehension because it knows the journey you're getting ready to go on. You may need to revisit that. And then the whole structure. Who are you writing for? That was the technical writing part. Who are you writing for? Because you write differently to a techie than you would a doctor, than you would just an average person. So they taught us all that. It was a great experience. Listen, I wouldn't trade Del Tech forever. I wouldn't trade Del Tech for anything in the world. But that particular part of the journey was a very challenging, but it was so rewarding. I was back in school. When I got back in school, I just felt better. I was still working at Waltz, but I still felt better. I was feeling so much better about myself because when you go to school, you start to challenge yourself. You start to spread your mind. You start to just meet new people. And I met so many people who were doing the same thing. I did not know that Wilmington, Delaware Technical Community College on 3rd Street, 3rd and Shipley, was so diverse until one day they had an International Food Day. There were 55 countries represented in Delaware Technical Community College, Wilmington campus. I think it's called Orlando Jones campus now or something like that. But it was such a rewarding experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. But what it did was it stretched my mind. It opened my mind. It introduced me to new people. I started networking with people. Now the classes again were challenging, but I was so into school. I love telling people I'm a college student. I'm a college student. Going from cooking fried chicken to being a college student. Even when I went back to work, I just felt better about myself because I knew this wasn't the end. Prior to going back to school, I felt as though it was the end. Like, this is my life. I'm destined to fried chicken for the rest of my life. But guess what? It wasn't the end. It was the beginning. I was so, listen, I stayed in Del Tech for 5 years. Most people do Del Tech for maybe a year or two, build up their confidence, get a GPA, and then they go off to a school that they really want to um, go to, such as, like I say, Delaware State University, or Wesley, or Widener, wherever you want to go to school at, a major university. So a lot of people don't stay there, but I'm a Del Tech graduate. I stayed. I stayed in Del Tech. It took me 5 years because it was such a, listen, it was such an experience. I was afraid to leave, to be honest with you. I know that sounds crazy, but I was afraid to leave because it was such a learning environment. Everybody there challenged you. Like at Del Tech, if you don't know how to write or read, you're not going to pass. They use a red pen and mark up your paper. But when you get finished that class, understand this. If you got a B or an A in that class, oh, you earned that. And guess what? I felt so much confidence, and everything was transferable. Everything was transferable. A brief little story. I ended up leaving Del Tech very briefly, contemplated, and I was going to another college. I'm not going to get into the name of the college, but interestingly enough, the college I went to accepted every credit from Del Tech. After really contemplating, I said, this isn't really as challenging. I went back to Del Tech. Del Tech would accept none of the credits from that college. Another thing, when I decided to go to Bloomington University for my bachelor's, I also applied in Philly at a school called Temple, right? Do you know that Del Tech, everywhere I went, was accepted? Even when I did my bachelor's degree, I wanted to do an accelerated nursing degree at Widener University. I mean, not Widener, it was called, it has a dragon in Philly, right? I'll think of it during the conversation, but they accepted everything from Del Tech, everything, all my chemistry classes, my biology classes, my A and P, everything. But again, getting back to the story, It was such an enriching time that I stayed there for almost 5 years. I left there with an associate degree in human services and an associate degree in drug and alcohol counseling. Now, here's the interesting thing about drug and alcohol counseling in the state of Delaware. I was one of the few people that worked as a drug and alcohol counselor that had a drug and alcohol degree. I worked at a lot of places in Delaware where people were counselors but didn't have a drug and alcohol degree. They had a bachelor's degree in a lot of cases in psychology, human services, all kinds of things they had a degree in. But I was always one of the few people that actually had a degree in drug and alcohol counseling that was doing drug and alcohol counseling. Interesting. And one of the other things is there's a process called a certified alcohol and drug counselor. Now, certified alcohol and drug counselor is somebody who is able to do the assessment, and that's where they're actually able to bill for the services because you need to be a CATC. Well, Delaware Technical Community College, when I finished the program, was one of the only classes, one of the only programs where you can get a drug and alcohol degree, period, point blank. Couldn't get it anywhere else. But how about this? When I passed it, I met all of the requirements for the certified alcohol and drug counselor. So I literally just gave them my degree and was able to take the test. So I am a big advocate. But that is a condensed version of how exactly I went from being a chicken cooker at Walt's Flavor Chris to being a associate degree possessor of human services associate degree and as well as a drug and alcohol degree. So as I continue this journey with you and have this conversation with you, I want you to understand this, that it is a challenging journey. But guess what? It is so rewarding because it broadens your overall perspective on how you're going to be able to live your life. If you want to live your life to your fullest, listen, trust and believe. It is manageable and it is capable of being a reality of yours once you open yourself up. So I hope somewhere along the line this actually touched on what it is